In this lecture, I want to show you how we can use an external user provider in order to let our users to log into TeamCity. This is very convenient because if you set up TeamCity in your company, you probably have Office 365 or G Suite or something like that your users use. So it's good to have another user provider other than internal users. Let me just show you how we can enable other providers. If you go to administration page and if we go to authentication tab, you will see that there are authentication providers. We have built-in, which is basically what you saw in the previous lecture, and we created users and groups and everything in here. And you can change the settings. For example, if you click on edit, you will see that you can say, for example, allow users to reset their password, or if you want to do it as an admin, you can uncheck this and don't let them do that. Or if you want to allow users to register themselves in TeamCity, you can check this allow user registration from the login page. By default, it's not allowed and an admin has to create the users. So if I want to add, for example, another provider, you need to click on switch to advanced mode, and in advanced mode you will see that there is a button which says add module, and if I click on that, you can choose one of these two modules that come with TeamCity out of the box. If you have Windows domain, for example, if you have Active Directory and domain controller in your company, you can click on Microsoft Windows domain and provide your domain and click on add. Then TeamCity will allow domain users to log into TeamCity as well, which is easy to set up and is useful if your company uses Active Directory. TeamCity doesn't have any module for OAuth authentication, which means open authentication with Google, Twitter, Facebook, or Yahoo, or anything like that. However, there are third-party modules or plugins that we can add and use. In order to add such a plugin, we need to go to plugin list in the administration page, and we need to browse plugin repository. And in the search box, just type OAuth. And as you see, there is a plugin called TeamCity OAuth. This is a third-party plugin, so you have to understand this. And you can say get by clicking on the get button. Then this will be installed on your TeamCity. And of course, we have to click on enable uploaded plugins to enable them. This is a security feature. Now, if I go back to authentication, you will see that if I go to advanced mode again and I click on add module, I get an extra module, which is HTTP OAuth v2. And we didn't have this before. So if I click on that, you will see that there are some presets which says you can use GitHub, Bitbucket, Google, or custom. GitHub, Bitbucket, Google, they are basically open authentication providers. So if you want to use anything else, Facebook, Yahoo, Twitter, you can just use custom, and then your provider will give you client ID, client secret, and of course the link that you have to use in order to authenticate. In this tutorial, we want to use Google. So what we need from Google is Google client ID, client secret, and scope. So let's go to Google and create client ID and client secret. In order to create client ID and client secret, we have to go to console.developers.google.com. So console.developers.google.com, and you log in with your Google account. Obviously, if you want to create client ID and client secret for your TeamCity, you should use a user that is very unlikely to leave your organization, or just create a user in your G Suite or Google specifically for TeamCity. Before we start creating credentials, make sure that you create a new project. Just hover your mouse in here and click on new project and give it a name. For example, we can say TeamCity. By doing this, you are separating the different credentials. So once I'm in the relevant project, we have to click on credentials tab and add a new credentials. Normally, before we create credentials, what we can do is that we can customize our consent screen. Consent screen is when we go to, for example, Google, and we see a Google page and there is like an allow or deny button, and we say that yes, we allow Google to have access to my user. If you have a G Suite account, you have to use internal, but if you just want to use any Google account, you can click on external. You have to be very careful when you choose external, because then any Google account can basically access your application. So in the application name, I can say this is TeamCity. You can provide a logo if you want. So once the consent screen is customized, I go back to credentials and I click on create credentials and make sure that you choose OAuth client ID and make sure that you use web application and provide a name. Again, I can say TeamCity, and if your application uses JavaScript, which TeamCity does, then you have to provide the valid origins for the JavaScript. So again, because I'm using localhost, I can say HTTP localhost is the location of the JavaScripts, and we can click on create. Once you do this, you will be given client ID and client secrets. So you copy client ID, paste it into TeamCity. You click on copy button for client secret. You go back and you provide it here. And if you want to limit the accounts to a specific domain, you can put the domain in here. For scope, you have to provide profile and email. Profile and email must be separated by a space. Just type profile space email. And we click on done. One thing we need to do again is that we have to go back to our credentials in Google and find it, which is TeamCity, edit it, and we have to provide return URL. So we, under authorized redirect URLs, we click on add URI and paste the link of our TeamCity in here, and that is because once the user is authenticated, we get redirected back to TeamCity, and therefore Google needs to know where the user should be redirected to, and then we click on save, and that bit was missing. So now if I go and sign out, we go back to login page, and you will see that apart from the standard login page, I have an extra option which says login via OAuth. And if I click on that, I get redirected to Google. I can choose my email, and then I get an error message which says user has to be created. It says unauthenticated since user could not be found or created. If you get this message, don't get upset. Just click on login and log in with admin. Go back to administration, go back to authentication, find your module, which is HTTP OAuth, edit it. On the top, there is a checkbox which says allow creating new users on the first login, and click on done and save. And again, we can log out. And again, if I go to login via OAuth, I go to Google, I choose my account. This time my account didn't exist, but it gets created, and I can click on save changes. If I actually log out and log in with another user, you will see that again, if I say login via OAuth, and I choose another Gmail user or Google user, you will see that if I go to main page, I can see a project. You might want to say that no, like when a user logs in, they shouldn't see anything until an admin assigns some type of permissions or roles. This happens because there is a default role. So if we go to groups and we click on all users, you will see that if I click on roles tab, there is a role assigned to the root project, which is project developer. And we did that, I think, when I was explaining the roles and groups. If you unassign this, then if I create a new user using, for example, Gmail, then they won't see anything. There will be no role. So if you assign a role to a group called all users, then as soon as a user is created by logging via Gmail, then they will get this role. To test this, I can delete one of these users that we created, and we can try again. So I can go to login page, click on login via OAuth and choose my account. Now if I go to main page, I don't see anything because there is no role assigned to me. When this happens, then admin has to go and assign a role to this user. The last bit that I have to explain to you is that again, if we go back to administration page and click on authentication, then we edit our HTTP OAuth plugin, you will see that there is an option which says hide login form. If you do this, then users can only log in with OAuth. They cannot use username password. And make sure that you do this if the only way that users log in should be Gmail or, for example, Microsoft Azure or something like that. So I hope that you like this. Let's go and learn advanced topics about Octopus Deploy.